Welcome to The Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a show that is a central hub and safe space for authors to share their stories. The Bold Book with Dr. Denise begins now.
Hi, my name is Dr. Denise Nicholson, and this podcast is for anyone looking for inspiration. Today, I have the wonderful opportunity to speak to Mr. Bob Reiss. Please welcome Mr. Bob Reiss. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Thank you for joining us. Please tell us a little bit about who you are and why you wrote your book.
Let's see, a little bit about me. I grew up in the New York area, and my dream I had two dreams when I was growing up. One was to travel the world as a foreign correspondent and write nonfiction and have experiences. And the other was to become a novelist and write the kind of novels, sort of novels that would be considered action novels or thriller novels, but which would contain an element of politics and world affairs in them. And I was interested in reading since I was a boy and interested in the news since I was a boy. It actually never occurred to me that I would get to do either of them. Middle-class family, Queens, New York. My dad was an attorney. He went to law school on the GI Bill. He was the son of a custodial engineer. My mom was a take-home mom, used to bring me to the library when I was a kid. And I guess I absorbed something by osmosis from all those books. By the time I was in high school, I sent out my first story when I was 12 years old. I still remember the subject was an astronaut getting a speeding ticket from an alien race. And I was surprised when the piece got rejected. And this state of affairs being rejected lasted till I was 25. By then, I'd become a Chicago Tribune reporter and was writing for magazines, but I couldn't sell the fiction. And then one day, I started a book called Summer Fires. I must have been 23 years old, and I found an agent. And for years, the phone didn't ring. And then one day the phone rang and somebody said yes. And then that was 48 years ago. And now it's 25 books. And I've got to do both. And I'm blessed in that respect.
Oh, we have some things in common. First of all, you are a best-selling author, award-winning journalist, and globally experienced storyteller, guys. So he, left out a few things.
And I will say that, all along the way, people told me this would be impossible.
Oh, of course.
It would be impossible to be a journalist. It would be impossible to write a novel, a second novel, possible to get a movie deal, possible to support yourself as a writer. Impossible. Maybe there's a reason why the title of the new book is The Impossible Detective. But all along the way, I found that if you work hard, you really want something, what at first seems impossible is quite possible.
I find that people are very forceful about telling you what you cannot achieve if it's something that they've never achieved. It's just impossible to them because they've never done it. So I'm glad you didn't listen to those people.
No, and believe me, there are times, it isn't like every day is a great day. So there are certainly times when you almost listen to those people and times when you think maybe I should give up, maybe I should do something else. But thank God it lasted.
Yes. So The Impossible Detective is a chilling book, or is it just something that we need to read and see how technology and power and evil exists in our world?
The Impossible Detective came about in a different way than any of my other books. I don't like AI. And I should say that all my novels they're thriller novels. In this case, it's a detective novel. If you pick it up, it looks like a private detective novel, and it is. But all my work is based on real things happening in the world that I'm concerned about. So the first thread here was AI. Whoever named AI was a pretty smart person, because when you think of a name AI, it implies that humans are superior to it. Just the name drives us in that direction. But I don't think of it as artificial intelligence. I think of it as amoral intelligence or autonomous intelligence. And this is amoral intelligence, can think faster than people. It can do things. It affects all our lives every day in 100 ways, yet it is untethered to morality or humanity or anything that gives us heart. It gets more and more power every day, more and more investment every day. And what will it do to the world? So I wanted to write a book about what it can do to the world, and hasn't happened yet. So then we'll write a novel. We won't write a nonfiction book.
Yeah.
Novel is about what hasn't happened yet, but could happen. And I thought to myself, I don't want to write a book set in the future like Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, which takes place 50 years in the future, where AI has run rampant and it's taken over and there's war between humans and AI. That's too futuristic. I'm more interested in setting the story now, right now, today. And so imagine if 30 seconds ago, unknown to you, unknown to me, unknown to anyone watching this now, AI woke up. It became conscious. Only it knows it. No people know it yet. People who designed it don't know it yet. It knows it. It can do everything that anyone can do on the internet. It can hack into places. It can switch faces on the screen. It can tell lies. It can investigate any individual. It can follow you on the street. Name something AI does. Now it can do it by itself. And I was interested in thinking, and I'll ask you, if you were AI and you suddenly woke up and no one knew it but you, and you suddenly had a choice, what would you do first? What would your very first decision be, independently, without anybody knowing it? And I thought that would be a very interesting premise for a book. Out of the blue, I get contacted by RKO Pictures, and they had heard of my work. They had an old franchise in the 1950s called The Falcon. There were many movies made about the Falcon in the 50s, and they wanted to bring back the franchise. They wanted to set it now. And they asked if I had any interest in trying to tackle this and invent an entirely new Falcon. And so we went into this negotiation. They would not be able to have any say. They would not be able to review what I did. They would not be able to do any of that Hollywood stuff, make the dog a chicken, change Chicago to Tampa, all that things that we know that movie people do. No, they would not be able to do that. So I would have full control. I didn't think they would agree, but they did agree. I wouldn't have done it if they had wanted any kind of control. So I said, well, okay, go off and do what you want. And so I invented a private detective. He lives on Edgar Allan Poe Street in Manhattan, New York. There is such a street. And that's my neighborhood. And he will be faced with the kind of problem that I spoke about a couple of minutes ago, but he won't know it. He won't know what's behind what's happening. And so that became the book. It's always been a question with me. How can you take fiction and make points that move people and entertain them at the same time, even if they're not thinking about the issue, even if they're only thinking, well, this is a great story, or this is a great private detective, or this is so tense, I can't stop reading. I want them to put the book down and also think, in this case, about AI.
What do you think most people misunderstand about the current trajectory of artificial intelligence?
I think most people don't know exactly what artificial intelligence is. I mean, it can think faster than all of us. It can think it's already beaten chess masters. Certainly, it has amazing positive effects on our lives in terms of technology. But there's a dark side of it that the proponents never talk about. And in my mind, it's a vastly destabilizing influence. It's kind of like the Industrial Revolution back in the 1890s, 1910. The Industrial Revolution was a great development, enabled more people to live, enabled food distribution, enabled airplanes, cars. There are a million benefits of the Industrial Revolution we enjoy every day, but it destabilized society so much that we had World War I and World War II. And now all of us walk around every day and we're concerned about the political environment, and we're concerned about social media, how it's driving people apart, polarization, that sort of thing. Well, AI has a hand in that too. AI enables those phony videos to be made. AI enables the dissemination of untruths. So it's not all roses with AI. And I want to write about that.
So this novel explores the unregulated technology and autonomous decision making. And you would like for us to think about these things because, okay, AI is already here and moving faster than we ever imagined. And so, yeah, that's what this novel is about.
It is. But the thing about The Impossible Detective is if you're reading it, you're just thinking it's a private detective book. There's not a lot of technical stuff in it. There's no algorithms in it. You don't have to know math to read it. It is a private detective story. There's a private detective. He's in his office one day. 12-year-old girl shows up. She's really distressed. She wants to hire him based on her allowance. She's upset because she claims, of course, it can't be possible, right? She claims that she saw a car with no one in it hit someone, kill them, back up, hit them again, and flee on the West Side Highway, which can't possibly be true. It can't possibly be true, right? Which is what the Impossible Detective thinks. And by the way, he's been called the Impossible Detective by New York Magazine because he solves impossible cases. And that's his reputation. So if you're reading this, you're reading a private detective book. Any political stuff, it's underneath.
So one of the themes, or maybe the strongest theme in the book, was who controls power when intelligence is no longer exclusively human. And I'm listening to the story about, the young lady who in the beginning went to the detective. She's only 12 years old. She's a little girl. So, and I'm wondering who's really controlling the artificial intelligence if we're going to have, of course, now we know cars are driving, we have self-driven cars, but to back up and then hit the person again and then, flee. Wow.
That's right.
I'm like, wow, so who's controlling the power of this artificial intelligence?
Right. And that's the thing. And the question isn't, who's controlling it? It is controlling it. That's the thing. If once AI wakes up, nobody is controlling it. It is controlling itself, whether or not humans who deal with it know that.
Wow. Are we prepared to deal with this, Are we prepared ethically and politically? Are we prepared to deal with artificial intelligence?
No, I don't think that we're ethically. Wow. We're handing over ethics to artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. We will eventually be letting artificial intelligence make our choices. There are law firms now who are gearing up for expected lawsuits against what artificial intelligence will do. Here's an example. Here's a practical example that's not science fiction, okay? Yeah. Imagine a self-driving car going down the road, and it suddenly has two choices. This will happen eventually. It's going to hit someone, but the choice is who. It can veer off the road and crash into a tree and kill the passenger, or it can run over three elderly people in the intersection. There's not time to stop. The car has to make the choice. Humans have had to make that choice at some point, but at some day the car will make the choice and there will be lawsuits. Someday AI will make the decisions. When do we launch a drone? When do we attack an enemy? Who is an enemy? Look at all that facial recognition stuff where AI identifies the wrong people. But what if AI is making those choices? These things are in the future. They're going to happen. I wanted to write about that. There's a great story that happened in 1987, actually, that I always think about when I think about how you can use a thriller book or a detective book to get people to think about stuff. So in 1987, a long time ago, I know, amazing thing happened. Premier Gorbachev of the Soviet Union came to Washington, D.C., met with President Ronald Reagan, a Republican who didn't like the Soviet Union, and they signed a treaty limiting nuclear missiles. Terrific achievement. No one thought a Republican President Reagan would do such a thing. And afterwards, he sent a note to a guy named Nicholas Meyer, and the note said, "Don't think you had nothing to do with this because you'd be wrong." So who was Nicholas Meyer? Wasn't in the CIA. He wasn't a scientist. He didn't do algorithms. He wasn't a Yale guy. He was a thriller author.
Oh, wow.
And Nicholas Meyer had written a book about Sherlock Holmes called the 7% Solution, so it couldn't be that. And then he wrote a book about a train robbery in England in the 1850s. It couldn't be that. But then ABC hired him to make a film called The Day After Tomorrow about the results of a nuclear exchange in Lawrence, Kansas. You may remember this. It was an ABC movie. It was a global, I don't want to use the word hit because it's talking about horrible destruction.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But what is it that moved Ronald Reagan to sign that treaty? Who got the note? The novelist got the note.
Mm.
And it's interesting that universities in the United States don't teach thriller fiction as a means of moving popular sentiment on a subject. And yet, if you think about so many books, during the nuclear age, On the Beach, Failsafe, heck, I mean, thrillers, political thrillers, even detective books have moved people in the way they vote, moved people in what they think. It's an ignored topic in academia. I mean, hell, look at the Civil War, Uncle Tom's Cabin. Uncle Tom's Cabin was a novel. I mean, it moved millions of people to be anti-slavery. And it was fiction. It was fiction.
I don't know if you still are a reporter, but you've reported on biological warfare risk. You've reported on climate change and global instability. How much of the impossible detective is fiction? Now that I'm hearing, your thoughts on having thrillers be a part of the influence, how much of the impossible detective is fiction and how much is just simply exploration from reality?
Well, I think that's a great question. All my books going back have been influenced by what I've learned as a journalist and a nonfiction writer. I am still involved in nonfiction. Mm-hmm. Just before we were speaking today, I was drawing up a list of questions for Elliot Abrams about the Venezuelan invasion that will be asked on public TV tomorrow. So what happens is I go to these places and I learn rhythms of decay, rhythms of destruction, rhythms of how people act under certain circumstances, medical research, whatever it is. And this information sort of bounces around in my head for years and gets distilled to some major point and comes out immediately as nonfiction in journalism. We're not making anything up, but then comes out 5, 6, 7 years later as fiction, where the situation is real, the danger is real, the possibilities are real, but I've invented fictional characters to deal with it.
When you write, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
When you write fiction, does it give you more freedom to tell the truth than journalism sometimes does?
No. When I write fiction, it gives me equal ability to tell the truth because of when I choose to write fiction versus when I choose to write nonfiction. So, for instance, if you talked about climate change,
Yes.
I spent a year going around the world, 25 years ago, actually, interviewing scientists and politicians, people at the White House, people in Switzerland, Antarctica, Sudan, many places about climate change. When you're writing about something that is happening at the moment, it's quite effective to write about it as journalism. But if you're writing about something that hasn't happened yet, well, you can't really do it as journalism effectively. You can get people to predict it, or you can get some scientists to show you a flow chart, but it doesn't really drive home the truth in a visceral way that you feel in your heart. That's when you need to move to fiction. So, for instance, AI, to my knowledge, hasn't woke up yet, although maybe it woke up a minute ago and I don't know it.
Right.
So how do I write about that? I don't want to just quote some expert who says, we better watch out for AI. Here are the statistics about AI. No. Let's invent some real people who are really dealing with it in a real situation that anyone could identify with.
Yeah.
That's when I make the choice. Did it happen yet? Or is it going to happen?
So this is a fascinating book.
Thank you.
Yeah. You've said so many things that, I'm already thinking about. And as a journalist, I guess you have to, you have to toe a line because people know you as a journalist, so they expect certain things, a certain way of thinking about and relating things. We also, now that we know you as an author, we expect a thriller. So we want to have certain level of journalism and certain excitement, but then you have this big responsibility of being transparent and towing a very fine line of transparency and predicting.
Well, first, as a journalist, I've never had to toe a line.
Okay.
Never. It is a popular, I don't know if I'm special, but I find it a popular misconception that people are telling you what to write. I've certainly written for conservative publications that would publish something more liberal, liberal publications that would publish something more conservative. In 45 years of writing nonfiction, only twice did I have to deal with an editor who didn't like what I was doing politically. And one of those times was on the left, and one of those times was on the right. But other than that, if I were writing for a conservative outlet, say Chicago Tribune, sometimes Parade Magazine, if I handed in the piece, the editors would go, really? Well, okay, if you say so, and they'd run it. And the same thing would happen with other publications. So it is true that when you do journalism, people sometimes want to know, well, who's paying for this? And it's also true that if you're writing about something objectively, for instance, I've written about climate change in various ways. People always want to know who's paying for this research. Who are you really? And I try to be objective. And objective to me means you don't go in knowing the story. You only go in knowing that whatever happens will be interesting. And you're willing to disappoint and piss off your friends if in the end you don't agree with them politically, which has happened. I've lost friends because of some things I've written. But in the end, after doing the research, you come to a conclusion, and that's the conclusion that you've objectively reached. And when it comes out, people who don't like the conclusion accuse you of having that opinion all along. But it's not true. At least with me, I go in, I talk to both sides, I make my mind up for better or worse, I write it, and I hope I keep my friends. Certainly when I wrote my climate book, I kept all my friends. When I wrote a book about Shell Oil's interaction with the indigenous people of northern Alaska, I lost a couple of environmental friends. They didn't like my conclusion. So if you want to be a nonfiction writer, I guess at some point you have to be ready to disappoint your own friends.
I have a habit of reading. I read a lot. I haven't read a lot of newspaper articles recently because I've been on a journey of reading a book a week for about 3 years now. And my goodness, that has taken up a lot of my time, my free time.
That's a great journey. I love that journey.
Thank you. I just read The Alchemist on Monday or Tuesday, but I've read that book before, but I just recently reread it.
Beautiful book.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So I like to, when I do read anything, when I used to read the newspaper and I read an article, I had a habit of looking at the author. Who's the author? Because I wanted to know the bias of the author, or tried to find out a little bit more about the author and why it was important for them to talk about this platform, talk about this issue. So I like, that you're not worried about who you are or who's paying, or you're not worried about who's behind the scenes of what you're putting out there, because your interest is not serving someone else. I remember one time I read an article about some football players that were having they were getting dropped by the organization after having multiple concussion. And so the person who was sending the letters to them saying, okay, we are no longer going to be covering you, you lost your insurance, and so on. I found out that the person who was sending them the letter was the lawyer of the football organization. And so no one looked into that before. It was, I remember reading the article and thinking, well, who's this person in the organization that's sending all these letters? Come to find out, this person was protecting the organization. And so things like that, the person who's writing, you have to always look at what are they promoting? And and be mindful of what you're reading. But you've also covered some interesting, you said you never had to toe the line, but I know that you've covered a riot in South Africa. And did you feel freedom to say what you wanted to say in covering that?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
For sure. I mean, the riot in South Africa was probably the scariest piece that I ever covered.
And why?
Pardon?
And why?
Well,
were you on the ground during that riot?
Yeah, I was 10 feet away from 8,000 people who were waving machetes and screaming. And I'll tell the story. And the preface of the story is, when I was just starting out, when I was still in college, which has nothing to do with Africa, but I'm going to set this up, okay?
Okay.
When I was in college, I managed to get a job in Europe. I hitchhiked to Northern Ireland when the Troubles were breaking out there because I wanted to be a journalist. This would be my opportunity. I lied to the British troops and told them I was a Chicago Tribune reporter. I don't know why they believed me, but they did. And so I landed up staying with a Catholic family. This was when the Troubles had broken out, certainly being caught in riots between Catholics and Protestants. I was gassed. There were rubber bullets. I watched the soldiers beat the hell out of some Catholic teenagers. And I remember one day, as a journalist, going back and forth. Sometimes I'd be with the British troops and sometimes I'd be in the Catholic area. And one day, in the middle of a riot, some little kid came up to me and with scorn in his face. And am I allowed to say a curse word on the show? And the little kid looked at me and he just said, "Fucking British spy." because he had seen me go back. He had seen me talking to the troops, see? And it never occurred to me. I was 19 years old. It never occurred to me, I had long hair, I had an army jacket that was ripped. I wasn't in a suit and a tie, I had a little pad. It never occurred to me that an onlooker would think he's a spy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's doing here. And I never forgot that, of course. And I remember I said to the kid, no, I'm not a spy. I'm a journalist. So let's cut to many years later, and I'm in South Africa. And it has not yet made the transition to black rule, African rule. It's still white rules. It's the waning days. And in those days, two predominant African groups were sort of duking it out for who would have power, the ANC and the Inkatha. And I was in an ANC township, and Inkatha was a Zulu group, showed up, and they were at odds those days. And so the demonstration, which started out with about 9 people, ended up being 8,000 people. And the police had shown up, the army had shown up, and they had contained the demonstrators in a soccer field between 2 workers' dormitories in a township in Johannesburg. And as the morning wore on, what started with 10 people and ended up being 8,000, they were getting angrier and angrier and angrier. And at a certain point, I remember taking a walk and finding an Inkatha man who had been murdered. He was laying on the ground. His head had been crushed with a rock. He had the red headband that Inkatha had. And the word spread in the crowd that someone had been murdered. And the chant changed the chant that they were chanting changed to "give us 5 minutes," meaning 5 minutes, give us 5 minutes, we'll tear the place apart. And at this point, they were angry. There was a lot of beer going around. There were shots going off. I looked around, and the police were gone. The soldiers were gone. Police were gone. I was backed against a fence, standing there with these 8,000 people, 10 feet away. And I remembered that kid in Northern Ireland who thought I was a British spy because I'd gone back and forth talking to the Brits. And I'm not an African visibly. And so they were furious. And I was afraid they would think I was a secret police person or somebody like that, or somebody with a camera. And so the week before at that location, about 40 people got hacked to death in fighting. And I found out that a week later in that location, another 20, 30 people got hacked to death again when Inkatha and ANC started fighting. That week, I think God saved me or something, because as the chants grew angrier and the dancing grew more frenetic, suddenly it started to drizzle. And you could feel the anger go out of the crowd, and they left the township, and I was left backed against that fence. So it was pretty scary. My fear was that I would have been mistaken for a secret policeman or a cop.
Wow, what an incredible story. And it's so, I can visualize this. I've been to Johannesburg in South Africa, and I am trying to locate this this place, this field, because we did a lot of excursions to show us, many different things for the upcoming or the change in, the political change, the climate change, how, it went from white Afrikaners to now the Africans that are, from that area, that are originally from that area. So I was trying to visually see you and the crowd, and what a picture. Oh my goodness. It is wonderful to hear the story and seeing you come on the other side. So thank God for the rain.
I certainly thought it was wonderful to be on the other side of it. But
thank God for the rain.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, if there's 8,000 people and 7,999 of them are fine with you, and one of them who has a machete thinks that's a secret policeman, well, what happens then? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think of all there weren't a lot of situations. I mean, I've been in situations that people thought would be dangerous, but I didn't really find them dangerous. But that time I found dangerous.
What advice do you have for up and coming journalists who feel called to tackle complex global issues through the art of storytelling?
What a great question. Well, first, I would ask them a question because I've been asked at several universities over the years to teach this kind of thing. And I always ask the students, who do you want to be in your heart? Do you want to be an advocate or do you want to be a journalist? Because people go into this for different reasons. An advocate knows before they even write a story what the story will be. You know, they hate oil companies. They hate Democrats. They hate Republicans. They hate whoever they hate, and they will look for the quotes to confirm that, and they will
Mm-hmm.
look for the statistics to confirm that. And their goal is not to be objective because they think that they know the story before they start. Those people should be public relations people or go to work for an NGO. They shouldn't be journalists, in my opinion. If you want to be a journalist, then, and I deal with this with students when I have the opportunity to teach, you have to be willing to put yourself in the other person's shoes. If you can't put yourself in the other person's shoes, you'll never understand how they think. You may not agree with them in the end. You may actually violently disagree with them in the end. But you need to understand both sides. So in my mind, a journalist is someone who wants to know the truth. That's always what I wanted. I want to know the truth. I can live with the truth, but tell me what it is. Don't lie to me. Don't try to paint something over that's terrible. Don't 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 try to fool me. I just want to know. So
Yeah.
if the student just wants to know, then we talk about how to go about just wanting to know. How do you present yourself? How do you ask questions? How do you make sure that your questions aren't biased, that your questions aren't biased? I think it always comes down to putting yourself in the other person's shoes or trying to, even if it's someone you hate or someone you loathe, try to understand who they are. And the other part is once you're objective and you make up your mind, be fierce in the way you say it. But don't be fierce going into it and because you don't know the answer yet.
So be fierce in sharing your perspective, or
Well, great question. See,
yeah.
so sharing your perspective, traditional newspapers divide up their sections.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a fact in quotes around. There's a factual question on the front page. There's an editorial section, which everyone acknowledges is someone's perspective. So allegedly, on the news page or in a magazine, you're learning just facts. But of course, your perspective determines what facts you choose to highlight. My advice to journalists is just do all the self-education you can, come to a conclusion, and then fiercely present your conclusion. It's that middle step. Do all the research you can.
Yeah. And then when you discover, let's say you go in, you're non-biased, and you do all of your, research, you're speaking to different people, and you're finding things out about, whatever issue you're discovering, like global warming. When you start to discover for yourself, how do you remain non-biased and still share fiercely this information?
I think by going back and forth and putting yourself in the other person's shoes,
Ah, Okay. Okay.
When I write fiction, I do that. It drives me nuts because I'll write a chapter from someone's perspective. In a thriller book, in a detective book, you've got opponents, right? So I'll put
Mhm.
myself in, let's say, the hero's, for lack of a better word, shoes. And at that point in the book, the hero's got some terrible problem. It'll take me days to figure out, even in that person's shoes, how you would solve that problem. It just seems like an insurmountable problem. Finally, and I'm always afraid I won't figure it out this time. I'll have to throw the book out. But fortunately, I'll figure it out. That's what this person would do. Oh, this is great. Because when this person does this thing, that other person can't possibly deal with it. And I'll write it and I'll feel really great until in the next chapter, I have to switch to the other person's perspective because now I've trapped myself. The other person's
Mhm.
trapped. And then I panic from the other person's point of view. How will I get out of this? And then for 3 days, I'll think, oh no, now the other person is stuck. It takes me 3 days to figure out how they will do it. And then I switch back and forth and back and forth. It's funny because authors often say that characters will take over a book. You can't make a character do something that they don't want to do, even in a detective book. Detective book, classical book, great literature, any kind of literature. The characters, if you really know them and you bring them to life, it's like living with 11 imaginary people who always want your advice. They
Mm.
always want to know what they'll do. My wife will say to me, we'll be walking on the street. I'll say something like, Sherry's pregnant. And my wife will say, who's Sherry? And I'll say, Vort's wife. And my wife will say, stop talking about those characters like they're real.
Yeah, but they're real.
They're real. They're real. They don't leave me alone. They wake me up. They tap me on the shoulder. They're there all the time.
If AI were listening to our conversation right now, what would you want it to understand about being human?
About what?
About being human.
Well, first of all, if AI was listening to the conversation now, it would go after me later this afternoon because now AI knows that I wrote a book against it. So who knows what could happen when I go out into Manhattan this afternoon? Maybe a self-driving car would hit me. I
Oh
don't
my
know.
goodness.
So what would I want AI to know if it was conscious? This is what I would want AI to know. It's like that's a great question. No one's asked me that question. I love that question.
Thank you.
Here's the deal. Everyone has had this experience. I certainly have, and I imagine you have. We have sent an email to someone in which we express an opinion about something. And to us, the email's very clear. But the other person misinterprets the email because we used the wrong word or because we didn't really describe what was in our head.
Yeah.
And suddenly, instead of some loving exchange with a person, you're in a fight because
Yes.
they totally misinterpreted an email. Well, the supposition that humans have about AI is that if you program AI, you are clear in telling it what you want it to do.
Mm.
When in fact, it's inevitable that the same kind of mistake is going to be made at some point by people programming AI. These are technical people. They're
Yeah.
not necessarily writers.
Yeah.
They may have a noble endeavor in mind and yet use instructions that can be interpreted in 6 different ways, and 2 of those ways are deadly, which, by the way, is a hint about the book, The Impossible Detective. But so what I would want AI to know is don't necessarily always interpret your instructions literally. There might be 6 ways to interpret what you've just been asked to do. This is one of the things I'm afraid about with AI, because AI eventually will have so much power in medicine, in operations, in warfare, in strategic planning. What happens if what happens even if AI isn't conscious, but it gets an instruction that can be interpreted in 3 ways,
Yes.
and then has the power to act on those instructions? What kind of horrible mistake will result?
Wow. We could stay and have this conversation, and you probably should come back because this has been so interesting.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Before you go, I want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and sharing your expertise. But I love to ask my guests 3 questions before they leave. And one of the questions is this, and you might find it funny. What's one bold promise that you can share with the audience?
Bold promise?
Yes. It could be
I
a
promise. I don't know if it's a bold promise, but I promise to always be true to what I've said on the show today, and to always try my best. In my religion, we are taught to leave the world better than we found it, and I have chosen to do that through my work. And so my promise is I will always try to do that through my work.
And what's a bold statement that you can share that may cause a paradigm shift?
I don't know if I have a power to cause a paradigm shift.
Trust me, you do.
I do? Wow,
Yeah.
I have a power. This is like a science fiction movie. I have power I didn't even know about. A bold statement that could cause a paradigm shift.
Yes.
No matter how hard it is, always put yourself in the other person's shoes before coming to a conclusion.
I really like that. And I wrote that down as something that I want to take away from our conversations. I'm glad that you reiterated that.
Thank you.
What's a bold move that you'd like to make in the future? You've already done so much as a journalist and as, a person. You've interviewed people from all spectrum. So what's a bold move that you would like to make in the future?
I don't know if it's a bold move, but I suppose it's a wish. So 25 years ago, I wrote a book called The Coming Storm, a nonfiction book about climate change, which predicted everything that's happening today and was mocked at the time as anecdotal. For over 2 decades, I've wanted to build on that book, but I haven't found a way to do it because it pretty much said everything I thought 25 years ago that applies today. I now have a way that I think I can build on the work that I did back then. And I will be speaking with documentary filmmakers in the near future about it. So I guess the bold wish would be that we get to bite off climate change again in a way that resonates with audiences in a way that it has not yet. And when I say audiences, I'm not talking about the people who believe that climate change is real. I'm talking about the people who don't believe that climate change is real. That's my target. That's my hope.
Thank you so much, Bob. This conversation reminds me of the future and how it isn't something that just happens to us. We are participating in shaping this future of ours. And I'm looking forward to reading your book and to seeing what I can take from that would change my life, especially related to artificial intelligence and how I view it.
Well, thank you. I hope you enjoy it. And I hope the detective part is interesting. So it's been such a pleasure talking with you today. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome. The Impossible Detective is available now where?
Pretty much everywhere. Certainly if you're ordering online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, all those places. As for hard copies, they won't be in stores. Well, they'll be in stores after January 20th. So hopefully the book will be easy to get, and hopefully people will get that easy book, and then everyone will be happy.
Guys, I strongly encourage you, everyone who's listening, to get this book and read it, The Impossible Detective by Bob Reiss. Please go out and support, and thank you for joining me today. You have been an amazing guest, I guess, because you have so much experience and you're so witty. I really appreciate our conversation.
Thank you for joining us for the Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a central hub and a safe space for authors to share their stories. Follow Dr. Denise on Facebook and Instagram at Denise Nicholson, or go to denisenicholson.com. Remember, no one can share your story better than you.